So you're now getting started with this process and you're wondering, what's the first form I have to fill out? Well, that's the voluntary petition. And so I'm right now at a home page that I've created of a dummy account for someone named Ashley Adams. Ashley's ready to file Chapter 7. She wants to get started on her bankruptcy forms, and this is the first form that we want to fill out. So what I'm going to do is walk you through exactly how Ashley's filled it out so that you can have an example of how someone's successfully filled out their bankruptcy forms and gone on to get a discharge of their debts. That way you can use it and modify it to your particular circumstances. Now, keep in mind, we're not offering legal advice, but we are giving you an example that you can start from and hopefully get your bankruptcy forms in order to get a bankruptcy filed. So let's start. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and download a new form from the bankruptcy court's website. This is a link to download a clean copy of the voluntary petition form. You can also go to uscourts.gov to get this form. I just think it's a little easier to download it here. And so I'm going to go ahead and open with my system viewer. You'll note that my system viewer is Adobe. That's important if we want to be able to save these forms. So let's start with Ashley Adams, how she filled out the voluntary petition so that you might be able to have a good starting place. She lived when she filed in Huntsville, Alabama. And so the court where that district is Northern District of Alabama. So she selected that option. For case number, you're not assigned a case number until you actually file the bankruptcy. So she left this blank, as most people do when they first file. They haven't been assigned a number yet, and so you leave this blank. Now, when you file subsequent filings, if you need to, or if the court asks you to, you would need to include your case number that you've been assigned. She filed under Chapter 7, so she selected that box. This section, check if this is an amended filing. This did not apply to her because this is her original filing, as I would guess it is for most of you. So for the most part, if you haven't filed anything before, you're going to leave this unchecked. Okay, let's start with part 1 and how Ashley filled out this voluntary petition form. Your full name is the first part. We put in Ashley Adams. Now, you'll note on the right side there's a whole section about debtor 2. In our case, in Ashley's case, she did not actually have a spouse or anyone that she was filing jointly with. If you do have a spouse or someone you want to file a joint case with, that's going to take a little more due diligence on your part. That's a little bit outside the scope of this video. So if that is your situation, make sure that you either consult with an attorney or have someone help you with that and figure out the best way to do that. Okay, so part 1, section 2, that's all other names you've used in the last 8 years. In Ashley's case, she did actually have another name, and that's because she was married in the past 8 years and then got divorced. So what she put here was Ashley Watson. That was her name when she was still married. And that's the typical case that I've seen is for this section is, if you've got a name that you used when you were married and you've since gotten divorced and now you're ready to file a petition, you would include these names. Okay, the last 4 digits of your social security number. Include those there. Pretty self-explanatory. On the first part of the second page, there's a box that says to enter in your name, your full name. And so you can go ahead and do that here. And the great part about using Adobe, one of the nice features is that when you go ahead and enter your name, you'll notice that it goes ahead and populates it for you on all subsequent pages. which is nice. Anything you can do to save some time is always a good thing. Okay, let's move on to paragraph 4. Any business names and employer identification numbers you've used in the last 8 years. In her case, she selected I have not used any business names or EINs. This would be trade names, doing business as names, and things like that, as the form states. Okay, let's enter in an address. I'm going to go ahead and enter in a fake address. I'm not going to use this person's real address just for privacy considerations. Even though their form is a matter of public record, I think it's probably best to go ahead and make up a fake address. In this section, of course, you would put in what address, where is it that you live? You would put that in this section. So I'll put 123 Anywhere Lane, Huntsville, Alabama, 31123. Okay. And the county where she selected was Madison. Okay. Moving on to box 6. Why are you choosing this district to file bankruptcy? And it asks you to check 1. The typical option that I most often have seen is the first one, and that's over the last 180 days before filing this petition, I have lived in this district longer than any other district. Basically what that's saying is, where have you lived during the past 6 months before you're filing? In her case, she lived in Huntsville the entire time, and so she selected this option. Now, if you have a situation where you've moved a lot in the past 6 months, then it's going to be important for you to either consult someone to figure out how to fill this out, or to take a look at this statute. You can Google this statute, 28 U.S.C. section 1408. That's going to outline some of the reasons that you might have to be able to select various places to file for bankruptcy. In most cases, though, especially if someone's lived in the same place for the past 6 months, this is how I've seen it selected, and that's how Ashley actually selected it. Okay, let's move on to part 2. Part 2, tell the court about your bankruptcy case. And paragraph 7 is, what chapter of the bankruptcy code are you choosing to file under? Now, if you selected chapter 7 on the first page, it's going to actually auto-populate this first box for you, which is nice. And so this website's only meant for people who are filing Chapter 7. Ashley actually did file a Chapter 7, and so that's how she selected this part of the form. Okay, paragraph 8. How are you going to pay the fee? As you may know, there is a $335 filing fee to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So the court is asking, how are you going to pay this fee? And it gives you a couple of options. The first is, I'll pay the entire filing fee when I file the petition. And that's how a lot of people do it. They bring a check to the clerk's office when they file, or they do it electronically. But that's how I typically have seen it done. Now, there are 2 other options, though. And the second is, I need to pay the fee in installments. And you'd actually, as you see, have to attach a separate form if you're going to do this. And the third option is that you request your fee be waived. This is a little bit outside the scope of this video, but essentially if you've got justifying circumstances that would provide you the option to do this, then you can. I'm not going to get into this just to keep this video a little shorter, but this is something you might want to look into if you do believe that you are qualified to do this. This is something typically like active military duty, things like that. In Ashley's case, she actually selected, I need to pay the fee in installments. And so she went ahead and attached a separate form to her with her petition to apply to be able to do that. Okay. Question 9, have you filed for bankruptcy within the last 8 years? This is an important question because the Bankruptcy Code dictates generally that if you've filed within the past 8 years, especially if you've received a discharge from a bankruptcy court within the past 8 years, you're not allowed to do it again. So In her case, she had not filed a bankruptcy proceeding in the past 8 years, and she selected no. If you have, again, this is one of those areas that you'd probably need to do a little more research, maybe consult with a bankruptcy attorney and figure out, is this something that's going to prohibit you from filing? Because if it is, it's something you would certainly want to know about. Question 10. Are any bankruptcy cases pending or being filed by a spouse who is not filing this case with you, or by a business partner, or by an affiliate? So this would include a circumstance, obviously, where you've got a separate non-joint case filed by your spouse. The court wants to know about that. If you've got a business partner who's also filed bankruptcy in addition to you, the court wants to know about that. And an affiliate. Affiliate's actually a defined term under the bankruptcy code, so if you want, you probably need to do a little more due diligence to see if that applies to you. And in Ashley's case, it did not, and she selected the no box. Question 11, do you rent your residence? Ashley selected no here. I believe she was actually living with a family member, so she did not rent, and that's why she answered no. If you do rent your residence, the court, I think, predominantly wants to know, has your landlord obtained an eviction judgment against you? And if so, you'd need to fill out this separate form that this form outlines. Okay, let's move on to part 3. Report any businesses you own as a sole proprietor. So question 12, are you a sole proprietor of any full or part-time business? In her case, the answer was no. If you are, obviously, you'd want to select the yes option, but I will point out that you'll read this definition below the question, and that says a sole proprietorship is a business you operate as an individual. It doesn't include things like LLCs, corporations, partnerships. So if you do operate one of those types of entities, that's not exactly what the court's asking here. There would be other areas of these forms that you'd need to fill out accordingly if you do operate one of those types of entities. But here it's just asking, are you a sole proprietor? Okay. Question 13. Are you filing under Chapter 11 of the Bankruptcy Code, and are you a small business debtor or a debtor as defined by this code section? And in her case, she selected no. I am not filing under Chapter 11. Now, I mean, this whole website that we're working with here is really built for Chapter 7. So if you select anything other than this first option, I would recommend that you at least consult with an attorney, if not hire an attorney. This is not really a section that we'll be dealing with here on our website. Okay, moving on to part 4. Report if you own or have any hazardous property or any property that needs immediate attention. And Ashley here selected no. She doesn't actually own any real property, and so that makes this really quite simple to answer. Obviously, if you do own property and you have any reason to believe that there's a hazardous situation that poses a threat to public health or safety, that's something you're probably going to want to consult with an attorney about. That probably doesn't need to be said, but is worth saying anyways. Okay, let's move on to part 5. Explain your efforts to receive a briefing about credit counseling. Question 15, tell the court whether you've received a briefing about credit counseling. And you got to check one of these boxes. What we often recommend people to do is go ahead and receive a briefing from an approved credit counseling agency before you file a petition. You can do so online. I think most of them that I've seen cost about $15, and they will provide you a certificate that you can attach with your other filings. And so that's what Ashley did here. She selected that first option because she did receive her briefing from a credit counseling agency, and she filed it with her other documents as well. Okay. You've obviously got other options here about other ways you can do it. You can also, you may be in a situation where you've received credit counseling, but you haven't received your certificate. In this situation, you'll note you've got to file a certificate and a payment plan within 14 days. And then there are a couple other options that are, again, outside the scope of this video that I'm not going to go over. But if either of these apply to you, it's worth reading about them and doing some due diligence to see if you need to select that. Okay. Part 6. What kind of debts do you have? This question is really asking, are your debts primarily consumer debts? And it provides you a definition of consumer debts as incurred by an individual primarily for a personal, family, or household purpose. In Ashley's case, the answer here was yes. Her debts were not mainly business debts. She did not own a business that forced her into bankruptcy, essentially. She had credit card debt, medical bills, things like that we'll see in subsequent videos, but this is how she answered it. And so, are your debts primarily, you don't have to continue to answer this. You can go on to line 17. Okay, question 17. Are you filing under Chapter 7? Yes, I am filing under Chapter 7. Everyone that uses this website should hopefully be selecting yes to this option. And then the second follow-up question is, do you estimate that after any exempt property is excluded and administrative expenses are paid, that funds will be available for distribution to unsecured creditors? That's a mouthful. What that's essentially asking is, when you file your Chapter 7 and the Chapter 7 trustee has sold what property you have to pay creditors, do you expect that that's going to garner enough money to pay off all your creditors? In almost any situation I've seen, the answer to this question is no. And that's how Ashley has filled out this part. She does not expect that she's going to have enough money to pay off her creditors in full in this bankruptcy proceeding. So she selected no in box 17. Box 18, how many creditors do you estimate that you owe? This is pretty straightforward. In Ashley's case, she estimates that she owed between 1 and 49 creditors. And she lists them out all in her schedules, as we'll see in a later video. And so you'll see she's got under 49 creditors. Obviously, if you have more, select the amount in the box shown here. Okay. 19, how much do you estimate your assets to be worth? Ashley selected between $0 and $50,000. Remember, she doesn't own any real property. She does own a car, but she estimates that all her assets together are worth less than $50,000. Question 20, how much do you estimate your liabilities to be? Again, Ashley selected between $0 and $50,000. These are the kind of cases that are straightforward enough, dollar amount wise and creditor number wise, that are probably good examples of they could use this site. If you've got way more money, if you've got way more liabilities, way more in assets, again, that's something you probably want to consider hiring an attorney for. Okay, so part 7. We're about to wrap up this form. And that's the signature. In this part, you're essentially telling the court you've looked through this petition, you've gone over how you filled it out, and you declare under penalty of perjury that the information provided is true and correct. If you don't provide a full accurate description of your information, or if you mislead the court, you can certainly be subject to serious penalties and fines, in addition to, I believe, jail time. And so this section at the end actually describes that more in full. I understand making a false statement, concealing property, or obtaining money or property by fraud with my bankruptcy case can result in fines up to $250,000 or imprisonment for up to 20 years or both. So you absolutely do not want to misrepresent anything. You don't want to not disclose anything. If you've got anything, assets, liabilities-wise, or creditors-wise, please tell the bankruptcy court. So it asks for a signature. You can either print this out and sign it in by hand before you file. The other thing the court allows you to do is actually file by an electronic signature. And so what you do here is you do -S- and then your name. And that's what she did. -S- Ashley Adams. and the date that you signed it. In this case, she filed in December 17 of 2019. And so that's what she put in that box. Okay. The next section is page 8, and that is, if you're represented by an attorney, please have your attorney sign and fill out his information. In Ashley's case, she was in fact represented by an attorney, and he included his information here. He signed here, and he dated here. In our case, on this website, you're probably not going to be using an attorney. Maybe you are, but you're probably not going to be using an attorney. So typically you would have this whole section left blank. You don't actually have to include this in your filing. The way our website generates the forms is that this page will be included. It'll just be blank. And so what you would do is proceed to page 9, and this applies if you are filing this bankruptcy without an attorney. If you fall under that circumstance, which I would guess most people using this website will fall under, please read and take note of these disclosures and understand there are serious risks and legal implications that come with filing a bankruptcy. Please try to make sure you are sure you want to file a bankruptcy, that you're qualified to do so, and that you feel that you can do so without having an attorney. That's the main thing that this form is getting across. And so, you'd fill out this part and the form's completed. So in this case, once you read this form and you are aware that filing bankruptcy is a serious action with long-term financial and legal consequences, you'd hit yes. Are you aware that bankruptcy fraud is a serious crime? Answer according. And did you pay or agree to pay someone who is not an attorney to help you fill out your bankruptcy forms? If you did not, if you haven't paid anyone, you'd select no, obviously. And that's a great thing about this website, is that it's completely free. So you haven't agreed to pay anyone to help you fill out these forms. It's completely free. Once you do that, you fill in your signature, your date, your phone number, and your email address, if you have one. And that's the end of this form. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and file Save As. I'll go ahead and save it to my desktop, just to make things a bit easier. And I'll call it Petition. Okay, so I've saved the document. I can go ahead and close Adobe. And let's go back to the website, okay? In this case, you'll see that hasn't been a file saved yet by Ashley, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this Browse button. That's going to take me to all my files. I saved this file in the desktop, and so I'll select Petition and hit Enter. That's going to put the file in this box and make it ready to save. Then I can click Save. It's going to go ahead and save the file to our servers, and then you can see that here's the file we've already saved. If for whatever reason you want to come back and work on this document, you can click it, it'll download it, and you'll see that it's saved everything that we put. That way, if you want to open it up in Adobe again, you can. And then when you're sure that you're finished with this form, you can actually select this switch to say, I've completed it. That tells the website this form is essentially ready to be finalized at the end of everything. So when you've completed all your other forms and they've all hit complete, you can actually generate a full file-ready set of forms. And you'll note actually that for Ashley, when you look at her petition, there's a check mark here. in the side panel. So that's it. Thanks for learning about how to fill out the voluntary petition. Please, of course, fill out these forms according to your own financial scenario. Don't just copy everything that Ashley did. You've probably got some different circumstances that you're going to have to modify for your forms, but this, I think, serves as a good starting point. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next video.